The HOA president stood in my driveway blocking my moving truck. I couldn't move in until I paid HOA dues and submitted architectural approvals. I told her I owned the property. She pulled out her phone. "We're calling the police. You're trespassing, Karen." Didn't know I'd bought all 8 houses on that street at auction 3 weeks earlier. The street itself. The utility lines. Every piece of infrastructure the HOA claimed to control. 8 properties. $180,000 in HOA dues she'd collected over 5 years. $6,500 in back rent she owed me for. Living in my house, she thought the title HOA president gave her authority over property she'd never owned. Thought calling 911 on her own landlord would work. She was wrong. By the time the police arrived and asked for my deed, it was too late to undo what happened next. But before we jump in, tell me where you're tuning in from today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. The HOA president was standing in my driveway blocking my moving truck. Her car was parked sideways across the entrance. 3 other residents stood behind her, arms crossed, looking like they were about to stop a bank robbery. "You can't move." "In," Karen Mitchell said. I got out of the truck. "Excuse me? You haven't paid HOA dues? You haven't submitted architectural approvals? You're not in compliance with Riverside Oaks regulations." I stared at her. "I own this property. That doesn't matter. Everyone follows the rules here. I don't think you understand. I own this property. So I own all 8 properties on this street. I bought them at auction 3 weeks ago, including the street itself, including the common areas. I own everything." Karen's expression didn't change. "You still need to follow HOA procedures. The HOA has no authority over me. I'm the property owner." She pulled out her phone. "We're calling the police. You're trespassing." "I'm trespassing on property I own. You're refusing to comply with HOA regulations," she said. "Already dialing 911. We need you removed." I looked at the 3 residents. Behind her, they nodded in agreement, completely confident that Karen was right. Let me back up and explain how I got here. 3 weeks earlier, I was sitting in a county courthouse, the cashier's check for $800,000 in a very specific plan. I'm a real estate investor. I've been doing this for 15 years, buying distressed properties, fixing them up, selling them for profit, foreclosures, tax sales, bankruptcy auctions, the deals other investors avoid because they're too complicated or too much work. This particular opportunity was one of the strangest I'd ever seen. An entire street of houses going up for auction as a single lot. Riverside Oaks, 8 identical. 3-bedroom homes on a private street in a quiet suburb about 40 minutes from the city. The street was built in 2015 by a development company called Riverside Development LLC. They'd built 8 houses, sold for 2 individual buyers, and then gone bankrupt in 2019. Before selling the rest, the remaining 4 properties sat empty for years while the bankruptcy wound through the courts. Eventually, the bank foreclosed on everything the developer still owned and bundled it all for auction for empty houses, plus the 4 lots those houses sat on, plus the private street that connected them, plus the utility infrastructure, plus the small common areas at each end of the street. Everything, one package. It's one bid. I spent 2 weeks doing my homework. I pulled every document I could find: property surveys, title reports, HOA bylaws, utility easements, bankruptcy filings, county records. The more I dug, the more interesting the situation became. The 4 families who'd bought houses back in 2015 had formed a homeowners association to manage the street in common areas. They'd written bylaws, elected a board, collected dues. On paper, it looked like a normal HOA. But here's the critical detail. The developer had never actually transferred ownership of the common areas to the HOA. The HOA bylaws, said the association, controlled and managed the street and parks. But control isn't ownership. The developer had retained ownership of everything outside the 4 sold lots. When the developer went bankrupt, everything they still owned, including the street, the utility lines, and the common areas, became part of the bankruptcy estate, which meant whoever won the auction wouldn't just own the 4 empty houses. They'd own the land under the entire street, the water and electric lines running to every house, the small parks at each end, Infrastructure that made Riverside Oaks function as a community. I checked the deeds of the 4 existing homeowners. Each deed covered their house, an immediate lotta, about a quarter-acre each. Nothing else. No shared ownership of the street. No easements for the common areas, just their individual properties. The HOA didn't own anything. They just thought they did. I showed up at the auction with my cashier's check. There were 3 other bidders, 2 flippers I recognized, and 1 investor I didn't know. The starting bid was $780,000, about 40% below market value for 8 houses in decent condition. I won at $780,000. 2 weeks later, I closed on the properties. I now owned all 8 houses on Riverside Oaks, plus the private street they sat on, plus the common areas, plus the utility infrastructure running underneath it all. My plan was straightforward: renovate and sell 6 of the houses, keep 2 as long-term rentals. I'd move into the nicest one, lot 8, at the end of the street while I did the renovation work on the others. After 15 years of flipping properties and never staying anywhere longer than 6 months, I was ready to finally settle down somewhere. Riverside Oaks seemed like the right place. 3 days after closing, I received a letter in the mail. Official letterhead: Riverside Oaks Homeowners Association Board of Directors. The letter was from Karen Mitchell, HOA President. Dear new homeowner, welcome to Riverside Oaks. As a new resident, you're required to 1. Submit architectural approval forms for any exterior modifications within 30 days of occupancy. 2. Pay monthly HOA dues of $450, due on the 1st of each month. 3. Attend a mandatory new homeowner orientation meeting to review community standards and regulations. Failure to comply with these requirements will result in fines and potential legal action. We look forward to welcoming you to our community. Sincerely, Karen Mitchell, HOA President. I read the letter twice. These were standard requirements for HOA members, but I wasn't a typical homeowner. I owned all 8 properties. I was the majority landholder on the street. In fact, I owned more of Riverside Oaks than everyone else combined. I called the number at the bottom of the letter. A woman answered on the second ring: Karen Mitchell. This is about the letter I received regarding Riverside Oaks HOA. I just bought properties there and wanted to clarify a few things. Of course, she said, her tone polite but slightly condescending. Let me guess you want to know about the architectural review process. Actually, I'm calling because I own all 8 properties on Riverside Oaks. I bought them at the county auction 3 weeks ago. There was a pause. All 8, yes, the entire development. Another pause, longer this time. Doesn't change anything. HOA rules apply to all residents. Everyone on Riverside Oaks pays dues, no exceptions. I understand, but I'm not a resident in the traditional sense. I'm the property owner. I bought the houses, the street, the common areas, everything. That's not possible. Her tone sharpened. The HOA owns the common areas. It's in our bylaws. Your bylaws say the HOA controls the common areas, but you don't own them. The developer never transferred ownership. When the developer went bankrupt, I bought everything at auction. I own the land under the street. I own the utility lines. I own the parks. Check your DDL. See, it only covers your individual house and lot. Nothing else. I don't need to check anything, Karen said coldly. We've been managing this community for 5 years. We own the common areas. If you're going to live here, you'll follow our rules like everyone else. Pay your dues or face fines. I'm not trying to cause problems. I just want to clarify the ownership structure. Before she hung up, I sat there staring at the phone, realizing this woman genuinely believed the HOA owned property they didn't. And she wasn't interested in checking the facts. I chose lot 8 as my house, the property at the end of the street with the best layout. It's a corner lot with extra yard space and the least amount of repair work needed. Over the next 2 weeks, I did basic renovations, fresh paint inside and out, new appliances in the kitchen, fixed a leaky faucet, replaced outdated light fixtures, cleaned up the overgrown landscaping in the front yard. I didn't submit architectural approval forms. Legally, I didn't need to. The HOA had no authority over property I owned outright. On day 5 of the renovation, I found a violation notice taped to my front door. Notice of violation. Unapproved exterior modifications you have. Painted the exterior of your residence without submitting required architectural plans for HOA review. Submit plans within 7 days or face a $300 fine. On day 9, another notice appeared. Notice of violation. Failure to submit required architectural plans. You have failed to comply with previous notice. Submit plans within 48 hours or face a $500 fine. I ignored both notices. The HOA had zero legal authority over my property. These were empty threats from an organization that didn't own what they claimed to own. Move-in day was scheduled for Saturday morning. I rented a moving truck, loaded it with my furniture and boxes, and hit the road at 7 a.m. The drive from my apartment to Riverside Oaks took about 40 minutes. Pulled onto Riverside Oaks at 7:30 a.m. Moving truck rumbling behind me, that's when I saw them. Karen Mitchell was standing in the middle of my driveway. Her car, a silver sedan, was parked sideways across the entrance, completely blocking access. 3 other residents stood with her, 2 men and a woman, all with their arms crossed, all looking deadly serious. I parked the moving truck on the street and got out. "Good morning," I said. "You can't move in," Karen said. "Excuse me? You haven't paid your HOA dues. You haven't submitted architectural approvals. You haven't attended orientation. You're not in compliance with Riverside Oaks regulations.
How?
Cannot move in until you are. Karen, I own this property. I'm moving in. Not until you follow the rules." One of the men stepped forward, tall, mid-40s, wearing a polo shirt with Riverside Oaks embroidered on the chest. "We have standards here. You can't just ignore them." "I'm not ignoring anything. I'm explaining that the HOA has no legal authority over me." "Everyone on this street follows HOA rules," the woman said. "No exceptions." "I own this street," I said slowly. "I own all 8 properties. I own the road you're standing on. I own the utility lines under your houses. HOA doesn't have authority over me because I own the property the HOA claims to control." He stared at me like I'd just told them. The earth was flat. "You're trespassing on HOA property," Karen said, pulling out her phone. "We're calling the police. I'm trespassing on my own property." "You're refusing to comply with regulations," she said. "Already dialing 911. We need you removed from this community." I heard her speaking to the dispatcher, her voice urgent and authoritative. "Yes, we have someone trespassing and refusing to leave private property. He's trying to move into a house without HOA approval. We need officers here immediately." She gave them the address. My address, and hung up. "Police will be here in 10 minutes, she said, looking satisfied. I stood there next to my moving truck, staring at this woman who was calling the cops too. Evict me from my own property, a woman who lived on a street I owned, using utilities I owned, in a community whose entire infrastructure I controlled, and she had absolutely no idea. This was going to be a lot more complicated than I'd expected. The police arrived 8 minutes later. 2 officers, 1 older Hispanic man with sergeant stripes, 1 younger Asian woman. Their cruiser pulled up behind my moving truck, lights off. Karen immediately rushed toward them, waving her hands. "Thank God you're here. This man is trespassing." Pointed at me, standing next to the moving truck like I was a wanted criminal. Officer Rodriguez, the older one, according to his name plate, looked at me, then at Karen, then at the moving truck loaded with furniture. "What's going on here?" "He's trying to move into a property without HOA approval," Karen said, her voice urgent and authoritative. "We have regulations. He's refused to comply with any of them. He's trespassing on HOA property." Officer Rodriguez turned to me. "Sir, do you live here?" "I'm trying to," I said. "I own this property. I was in the process of moving in when she blocked my driveway and called you." "You can't just move in," Karen interrupted. "There are procedures. Architectural approvals, HOA dues, orientation." Officer Rodriguez held up a hand. "Ma'am, slow down. Sounds like a civil matter. We can't enforce HOA rules. He's trespassing," Karen insisted. The younger officer, Shun, stepped forward. "Sir, Do you have documentation showing you own this property? Yes. I walked to the cab of the moving truck and pulled out the folder I'd prepared specifically for this moment. Inside were copies of the deed, the title report, and the closing documents from the county auction. I handed them to Officer Chen. She reviewed them carefully, flipping through pages. This shows you purchased the property at 42 Riverside Oaks. 3 weeks ago? Yes, and the 7 other properties on this street. I bought all 8 at a county foreclosure auction. Karen's face went pale. That's impossible. You can't own all of them. Officer Chen looked up at me. You own all 8. Houses on this street? Yes, the developer went bankrupt. The bank foreclosed and auctioned everything as a single lot. Oh, I bought it all. Officer Rodriguez took the documents from Chen and reviewed them himself. These look legitimate. Turned to Karen. Ma'am, if he owns the property, you can't prevent him from occupying it. Even if he owns them, he can't move in without HOA approval. Karen's voice was rising now, desperate. We have rules, standards. He hasn't paid dues. He hasn't submitted architectural plans. He hasn't. That's between you and him, Officer Rodriguez said calmly. This is a civil dispute. You'll have to work it out through the courts or mediation. Can't force him to. Comply with HOA regulations. We're invoking our right to deny access to non-compliant homeowners. Officer Rodriguez sighed. Ma'am, that's not how property ownership works. If he owns the house, he has the legal right to occupy it. Karen's car was still parked across my driveway. I pointed at it. Can you tell her to move her car so I can access my property? Karen crossed her arms. This is HOA property. I'm parked. On a community street? He doesn't have the right to tell me where to park. This is my driveway, I said, on my property. Officer Rodriguez looked at Karen. Ma'am, is that your car blocking his driveway? I'm exercising the HOA's authority to move the car, ma'am. I'm not moving until he agrees to follow regulations. Officer, Rodriguez's tone hardened. Ma'am, you're interfering with his legal right to access his property. Move the car now, or I'll cite you for obstruction and have it towed. Karen stared at him, her face red, her hands shaking with rage. For a moment I thought she was going to refuse again. Then she stormed to her car.
Oh, got in.
And backed it out of the driveway with enough speed that her tires squealed. She parked it on the street about 50 feet away, got out, and slammed the door. Thank you, officers, I said. Officer Rodriguez handed my documents back. I'd recommend you to work this out through proper channels. HOA disputes get messy. Want to talk to a lawyer? Already have one? I said. The officers got back in their cruiser and left. Bye now. Other residents had started coming out of their houses. 3 couples, 6 people, total gathered on the sidewalk, watching. Karen walked over to them, talking rapidly, gesturing at me in the moving truck. I started unloading furniture. I'd hired 2 movers to help, but they'd called that morning, saying they'd be an hour late. I was doing it myself for now, carrying boxes, just dragging furniture up the front steps. One of the men from the sidewalk group walked over. He was maybe 50, wearing khaki shorts and a Riverside Oaks polo shirt. Excuse me, you can't just ignore HOA rules. I set down the box I was carrying. I'm not ignoring anything. I own this property. We have standards here, he said. Property. Values depend on everyone maintaining those standards. A woman joined him, short early 60s, with a tight gray perm. If you don't follow the architectural guidelines, it affects all of us. I own all 8 houses on this street, I said slowly, including the street itself. The HOA has no legal authority over me. They stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. The man, his name was Tom, I'd learned later, turned to Karen. Can't we fine him into compliance? Karen's expression shifted from anger to satisfaction. Absolutely. We'll issue daily fines until he pays his dues and submits proper paperwork. She walked to her car, pulled out a leather folder, and returned with a stack of pre-printed forms. She started filling them out right there on the hood of her car. Minutes later, as I was carrying a couch up the front steps, Karen approached with 4 sheets of paper. These are formal violation notices, she said. Handing them to me, I set down the couch and looked at them. Notice of violation. #1. Unapproved occupancy. You have moved into a residence without HOA approval. Fine, $500. Notice of violation number 2. Failure to submit architectural review. You have modified property exterior without submitting required plans. Fine, $300. Notice of violation number 3. Unpaid HOA dues, monthly dues of $450 are past due. Fine, $450. Notice of violation number 4. Unauthorized. Use a community street. Your moving truck is parked on HOA property without a permit. Fine, $200. Total fines, $1 for 5-0. At the bottom of each notice, fines must be paid within 14 days. Each violation will escalate by $100 per day until resolved. You're not serious, I said. Completely serious, Karen said. Violated multiple community standards. Pay the fines and submit proper documentation, or the amounts will increase daily. The HOA has no authority to fine me. We have every authority. It's in our bylaws. Your bylaws apply to HOA members. I'm not a member. I'm the property owner. Karen smiled a tight, cold smile. We'll see what the courts say about that. She walked back to her group of supporters. They stood on the sidewalk watching me unload the moving truck, talking in low voices, occasionally pointing. I finished. Unloading by 2 p.m., the movers finally showed up and helped with the heavy furniture. By 4 p.m., everything was inside. The house was a mess of boxes and furniture that needed organizing, but I was officially moved in. That evening, I called my attorney. His name was Marcus Webid. Worked with him on 3 previous real estate deals. He specialized in property disputes, title issues, easement conflicts. Exactly the kind of lawyer I needed. Marcus, I've got a situation. I explained everything, the auction purchase, the HOAs, claims of authority. Karen blocking my driveway, the police visit, the $1,450 in fines. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then he laughed. They're fining you for moving into property you own? Apparently. Me all the documents. Deeds, title reports, HOA bylaws, those violation notices. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. I spent an hour scanning everything and emailing it to him. Called back 30 minutes later. This is straightforward, Marcus said. You own everything. Houses, the land under the street, the utility infrastructure, the common areas. The HOA bylaws give them the right to manage and control those areas, but they don't own them. The developer never transferred ownership. When you bought the properties at auction, you became the owner of everything the developer still held. The fines are invalid. Completely. The HOA has zero legal authority over you. They can make rules for themselves as an association, but they can't enforce those rules on the property owner. It's like a tenant trying to find their landlord. What do I do? Send them a formal notice. Explain that you own all 8 properties. The street and the common areas. Include copies of the deeds and plat maps showing the ownership structure. Make it clear that any further interference will result in legal action. And tell them if they try to file a lien based on these bogus fines, you'll sue them personally for filing a fraudulent claim. You think they'll back off? If they're smart, yes. If they're not, ... double quotes. Then this gets interesting. I drafted the letter that night. 1 page, clear and direct. Oak. To the Riverside Oaks HOA board, this letter serves as formal notice. That one name, am the legal owner of all 8 properties on Riverside Oaks, including lots 1 to 8, the private street connecting them, and all designated common areas. I purchased these properties at county auction on date for $780,000. The HOA does not own the street or common areas. The developer retained ownership of these areas and they were included in my purchase. Attached are copies of the deeds plat, maps, and title documents confirming this ownership structure. The violation notices issued on date are invalid. The HOA has no legal authority to issue fines or enforce regulations on property I own. All claimed fines are void. Any further interference with my legal rights as property owner, including attempts to block access or file liens, will result in legal action for harassment and filing of fraudulent claims. You may also be subject to trespassing charges if you continue to use my property without permission. If you have questions about the ownership structure, I I recommend you consult with a real estate attorney. Sincerely, name I attached copies of all 8 deeds, the plat map showing property boundaries, and the title insurance documents. I sent it via certified mail to Karen Mitchell and the 3 other board members whose names I'd found on the HOA website. The next morning, I got an email from Karen. Your claims are fraudulent. The HOA owns the common areas per our bylaws. I've operated as the legal authority on Riverside Oaks for 5 years. Pay your fines immediately, or we will place a lien on your properties. You have 48 hours. I forwarded the email to Marcus. His response was 1 sentence. Let her try. For days after I sent the certified letter, I was checking property records online and found something that made my blood boil. Karen had filed a lien against all 8 of my properties. The lien claimed I owed $3,500 in unpaid HOA dues and fines. It was recorded with the county clerk's office, which meant it would show up on title reports and could interfere with any future sales or refinancing. I called Marcus immediately. She actually did it, I said. She filed a lien. Send me the recording number. I gave it to him. I heard him typing, then a long pause. This is a fraudulent lien, Marcus said. She has no legal authority to file this. The HOA doesn't own your property. They can't claim you owe them money for dues. And they certainly can't place a lien without a court judgment. This is illegal. What do? We can sue her personally for filing a false claim in this state. Filing a fraudulent lien carries statutory damages plus attorney fees. She could owe you $10,000 just for this. Let's give them one more chance to back down, I said. I don't want to destroy these people financially. Just want them to understand. Reality, Marcus sighed. You're more patient than I would be. The monthly HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m., according to the HOA website. Meetings were held at Karen's house, lot 3, right in the middle of the street. I showed up at 6:55 p.m. with Marcus. Karen answered the door. Her expression went from welcoming to hostile the instant she saw me. This is a private meeting, she said. You're not a member. I own this entire street, I said. I'm here to clear up the confusion about ownership. You're not on the HOA registry. You need to leave. Marcus stepped forward. I'm Marcus Webb, Mr. Name's attorney. My client owns all 8 properties on Riverside Oaks, including the land your house sits on and the land you're standing on right now. He has every right to attend this meeting. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, Marcus said calmly. While you do that, we'll wait inside. He walked past her into the house. I followed. Karen's living room had been set up for the meeting. 7 people sat on couches and folding chairs. Karen, 3 other board members, and 3 homeowners. They all turned to stare at us. He's trespassing, Karen said, pulling out her phone. I'm your landlord, I said. Technically, you're all living on property I own. A woman in her 50s, thin, nervous-looking, raised her hand slightly. I'm Linda. I'm the treasurer. What do you mean you own the property? I bought all 8 houses at auction, plus the street, plus the common areas. The developer never transferred ownership of anything except the 4 individual lots to the original buyers. When the developer went bankrupt, I bought everything else. Karen dialed 911. Yes, I need police. That Marcus held up his phone. I have Officer Rodriguez's direct number from the other day. Should I call him and save you the trouble of lying to dispatch again? Karen lowered her phone. Marcus walked to the front of the room and connected his laptop to Karen's TV.
Let me
show you something. He pulled up a county property records website and entered the address for Riverside Oaks. The plat map appeared on screen, showing all 8 lots clearly marked. These are the 8 properties, Marcus said. Lots 1 through 8. Now, let me show you who owns what. He clicked on lot 3, Karen's house. The deed information appeared. Karen Mitchell purchased 2016. Property description, lot 3, Riverside Oaks subdivision, 0.23 acres. He clicked on lot 6, Linda's house, Linda Park, purchased 2015. Property description, lot 6, Riverside Oaks subdivision, 0.24 acres. He pulled up the deeds for the other 2 original homeowners. Same thing, each deed covered only their individual. Lot, notice what's missing, Marcus said. No mention of the street, no mention of common areas. Your deeds only cover your houses and immediate lots, nothing else. He switched to a document showing my purchase. My client purchased lots 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8, the 6 properties that went into foreclosure. He also purchased the private street right-of-way, the utility easements, and the designated common areas at each end of the street. Total purchase. Price: $780,000. Tom, the man in the Riverside Oaks polo shirt, leaned forward. So what does that mean for us? It means you're homeowners in your individual houses, Marcus said. But you don't own anything outside your property lines. Don't own the street. You don't own the common areas. You have no legal authority to enforce rules on the property owner. Linda pulled out her phone and started searching for her own deed online. After a minute, her face went pale. He's right. My deed only covers my lot, nothing about the street. Or common areas. That can't be right, Karen said. The HOA owns the common areas. It's in our bylaws. Marcus turned to her. Your bylaws can say whatever they want. They can't grant you ownership of land you don't own. The developer wrote bylaws giving the HOA management authority over common areas, but the developer never actually transferred ownership of those areas to the HOA. When the developer went bankrupt, everything they still owned became part of the bankruptcy estate and went to auction. My client bought it all. This is a technicality, Kieran said, her voice rising. We've been operating as an HOA for 5 years. We've maintained the street, managed the common areas, collected dues. We have established rights. You've been operating as an informal neighborhood association, Marcus said. That's fine, but the moment you tried to enforce rules on the property, owner blocking his move-in, issuing fines, filing a fraudulent LENU, crossed from informal association into harassment and fraud, the room went silent. I stood up. Here's what I'm offering. I'll deed the street and common areas to the HOA at no cost. You'll own them outright. I'll even throw in $5,000 for initial maintenance. But there's one condition, Karen crossed her. Arms. What condition? You remove all fines against me, drop all claims, remove the fraudulent lien you filed, and resign as HOA president. The board elects a new president. We transfer the property, and everyone moves on. Clean slate. Absolutely not, Karen said. I built this community. Been president since day one. Not stepping down because you bought some houses at an auction. And I keep ownership of the street and common areas, I said. I start enforcing my rules. What rules? Tom asked. I looked at him. I own the street. That means I control who uses it. I own the utility infrastructure. The water and electric lines run through easements on my property. I own the common areas where you park your cars and walk your dogs. A woman I hadn't met yet, Susan, according to the name on her HOA badge, spoke up. You can't cut off our utilities. Actually, he can restrict access to infrastructure on his property, Marcus said. You'd have to negotiate easements with him if you want guaranteed access. I'm not cutting anything off, I said. But I am going to start charging for use of my property. Starting next week, there will be an annual fee to use the private street. You can't charge us to use the street, Karen shouted. It's private property, I said. I absolutely can. If you don't like it, you can use the public road, which is about a quarter mile that way. I pointed the next morning. I had a contractor install private property. No parking signs along both sides of Riverside Oaks. Bright red signs, professionally made. Every 50 feet at each end of the street, I installed security cameras with clear views of the entire road. Then I posted a notice on every front door. Notice: Riverside Oaks is private property owned by name. Unauthorized parking is prohibited. Vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. Residents may purchase annual parking permits for $1,200 a year. Contact email to arrange payment. Karen's response was immediate. She parked her car directly in front of her house, right under one of the no parking signs. I gave her 30 minutes. Then I called the tow company I'd already arranged. The truck arrived 20 minutes later. The driver hooked up Karen's silver sedan and drove away. Karen came running out of her house. What are you doing? That's my car. You're parked illegally on private property, I said. The signs are clearly posted. This is my street. I live here. This is my street. You live in a house on my street. She pulled out her phone and called the police. Again. The same two officers from before. Rodriguez and Shun showed up 15 minutes later. He stole my car, Karen said. He had it illegally towed. Officer Rodriguez looked at the no parking signs, then at me. Sir, did you have her vehicle towed? Yes. She was parked on private property without permission. You own this street? I handed him the same documents from before, plus the new plat map with ownership clearly marked. Officer Rodriguez reviewed them and sighed. Ma'am, he owns the street. He has the right to control parking. I live here. Well, I have to park somewhere. That's between you and him, Officer Rodriguez said. If he owns the property and you're parked without permission, it's a legal tow. Karen's hands were shaking. Where's my car? Joe's towing, I said. It'll cost you $250 to get it out of impound. That night, Karen sent an email to all Riverside Oaks residents calling an emergency HOA meeting. Subject line, urgent legal action against property owner for harassment and extortion. The meeting was held 2 days later. I didn't attend, but Linda the treasurer called me afterward. We voted to hire an attorney to sue you, she said quietly. Karen pushed it through. I voted against it, but she had the majority. Good. You hire? Some firm from downtown? Thompson and Associates? I called Marcus and told him, 2 days later. Marcus got a call from the attorney. Karen had hired a man named Robert Thompson. Marcus put him on speaker so I could hear. Marcus, I've reviewed the case, Thompson said. Your client owns everything. The deeds are clear. The HOA has no standing. That's what I told them. I recommended they drop this and settle, except his offer to deed the common areas, cut their losses, and the President Karen Mitchell refused. She wants to go to court. She's convinced they have established rights through years of operation. They don't. I know. I told her that. Won't listen. So here's what I'm doing. I'm withdrawing from the case. I'm not taking their money to file a lawsuit. I know they'll lose. Called to give you a heads up. She's going to find another attorney, someone less ethical who'll file anyway. Thanks for letting me know. Marcus looked up. Me. She's going to court. Let her, I said. I'm done being patient. Karen found a new attorney within a week. His name was David Chen, and according to his website, he specialized in aggressive advocacy for homeowners' rights. His billboards were all over the highway fighting for you. Marcus got the lawsuit complaint 2 weeks later. Called me that afternoon. They filed, he said. What are they claiming? It's interference with homeowner rights, extortion, harassment. And my personal favorite, weaponizing property ownership to punish residents. Weaponizing property ownership? That's the actual language in the complaint. They're claiming you're using your ownership of the street to retaliate against the HOA for enforcing legitimate rules. What do they want? They want the court to force you to deed the common areas to the HOA at no cost, remove all parking restrictions, pay $50,000 in damages for emotional distress, and cover their legal fees. I laughed. They're suing me for doing exactly what I offered to do for free? Except they don't want you to have any conditions. They want the land. They want you to stop charging for parking, and they want you to pay them for the trouble. Can they win? No. This is frivolous, but we'll have to defend it, which means time and money. That's what they're counting on, making it expensive enough that you settle. I'm not settling, good Marcus said, because I want to bury them. Discovery. Started in January. Marcus requested all financial records from the HOA, going back 5 years, bank statements, receipts, invoices, dues, collection records. Everything, Linda, the new interim president, cooperated fully. She sent boxes of documents. Marcus spent 2 weeks going through them with his paralegal. Then he called me into his office. You need to see this, he said, spreading papers across his conference table. The HOA had been collecting dues from all. For original homeowners for 5 years at $450 per month per house, total collected approximately $180,000. That's a lot of money for maintaining a single street and 2 small parks, I said. Look at what they spent it on. The financial records showed approximately $40,000 spent on actual maintenance over 5 years. Snow plowing, lawn care for the common areas, some landscaping, replacing a few streetlights. The remaining $140,000 had mostly gone to a company called Greenscape Management Services for something called Community Management and Consulting. To Marcus. Pulled up the business registration for Greenscape Management. The owner, Karen Mitchell, she's been paying herself, said $2,500 per month for 5 years. That's $150,000 directly into her pocket. There's also a line item for HOA president compensation, another $500 per month. Is that legal? It depends. Some HOAs compensate board members, but it has to be disclosed to homeowners and approved by vote. I asked Linda. She had no idea Karen was taking any money. Karen handled all vendor contracts herself. The other board members only saw summary financial reports, never the actual invoices. So she's been embezzling from her neighbors for 5 years, and then she sued you for harassment, Marcus said, smiling. We're filing a counterclaim. The counterclaim was 20 pages long. Marcus filed it a week later. It named Karen Mitchell personally for fraud, fraudulent lien filing, and theft of services, specifically using my private street for 5 years without permission or payment. It also named the 3 board members who'd authorized the lawsuit for enabling fraudulent actions, though Marcus noted in the filing that Linda had cooperated fully with discovery. We demanded $25,000 in damages, removal of the fraudulent lien, reimbursement of all legal fees, and a full accounting of HOA funds. The court ordered mediation before trial. The session was scheduled for February 15th at the county courthouse. The mediator was a retired judge named Patricia Hoffman. She'd been doing mediation for 20 years and had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. We met in a conference room, me and Marcus on one side, Karen and her attorney David Chen on the other. Linda and the other board members sat in a separate waiting room. Judge Hoffman reviewed both the lawsuit and counterclaim for 30 minutes while we sat in silence. Then she looked up. Let me be direct, she said. The HOA has no legal standing. Here, you don't own the property you claim to control. Mr. Name bought it at a legitimate auction. Your bylaws don't grant you ownership rights. They never did. Karen started to speak. Judge Hoffman held up her hand. However, she continued, turning to me, you're within your legal rights. But you're creating problems for innocent homeowners who had nothing to do with this dispute. Charging $1,200 per year for street parking is punitive. I offered to deed everything to the HOA for free, I said. She refused. I'm not resigning, Karen said. I built this community. Judge Hoffman looked at her. Ms. Mitchell, you've also apparently paid yourself $150,000 from HOA funds without proper disclosure. That's going to be a problem if we go to trial. Karen's face went pale. Those were legitimate management fees. Were they approved by the board, disclosed to homeowners? Silence. Here's my recommendation, Judge Hoffman said. Mr. Name deeds the street and common areas to the HOA. The HOA pays him $50,000 for 5 years of unauthorized use. Ms. Mitchell resigns as president and is permanently banned from the board. All fines against Mr. Name are voided. Everyone moves on. Linda was called in from the waiting room. She agreed immediately. That's fair, Linda said. We'll accept Ms. Mitchell. Judge Hoffman asked. No, Karen said. I'm not resigning. I've been president since this community was founded. I'm not stepping down. The other 2 board members, Tom and Susan, were brought in. Judge Hoffman explained the proposed settlement. We should take it, Tom said. Karen, we can't win this. We're going to trial, Karen said. I'm not backing down. Linda looked at her. Karen, we can't afford to lose this. If we go to trial and lose, we'll owe his legal fees on top of everything. Else, some of us could be held personally liable. We're not losing, Karen said. This isn't your decision alone, Linda said. We're a board. We vote. They held an emergency vote right there in the mediation room. 3 votes to accept the settlement. 1 vote Corinne's to proceed to trial. You can't override me, Corinne shouted. I'm the president. You were the president, Linda said. As of this moment, the board votes to remove you for acting against the HOA's best interests. I'm now interim president, and I'm accepting this settlement. Karen stood up, knocking her chair backward. I'll sue all of you for this. Get in line, Marcus said. Karen stormed out. Her attorney David Chen looked embarrassed, ill. I'll be in touch about withdrawing from the case. 2 days later, Karen filed for a restraining order against me. The petition claimed I was harassing her, stalking her property, and creating a hostile living environment. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. I showed up with Marcus. Karen showed up alone. David Chen had officially withdrawn as her attorney. The judge reviewed Karen's petition, then looked at me. Mr. Name, have you had any contact with Ms. Mitchell in the past 2 weeks? No, Your Honor. I've avoided her completely. Have you threatened her in any way? No, Your Honor. The judge turned to Karen. Ms. Mitchell? What evidence do you have of harassment? He towed my car. He installed cameras pointing at my house. He's trying to force me out of the community. I built. He owns the street where your car was parked, has the right to install security cameras on his property. And according to the mediation report, he's offered to deed the common areas to the HOA. I see no evidence of harassment here. Petition denied. Karen started posting on neighborhood social media that night. Facebook groups, Nextdoor, community forums, seen where she could reach people. Local investor trying to steal our community. Riverside Oaks is under attack from corporate greed. Stand with us. She created an online petition. Save Riverside Oaks from predatory property practices. And she got 50 signatures from people in surrounding neighborhoods who had no idea what the actual situation was. Linda called me. I'm sorry about this. What? We're trying to get her to stop. It's fine, I said. Let her vent. 3 days later, Linda called again. We held an emergency board meeting without Karen. We voted to remove her as president for acting against the HOA's best interests and exposing us to legal liability. I'm now the official president. Can you do that? The bylaws allow removal of board members by majority vote for cause. We had cause. She's out. What did she say? We didn't tell her. We'll send her a formal letter tomorrow. Linda called me the next day. We want to settle. What do you need? The original offer stands. I'll deed the street and common areas too. The HOA for free. You pay me $15,000 for past unauthorized use. I'm reducing it from $50,000 as a gesture of goodwill. All fines against me are voided. Karen is permanently banned from the board, and the HOA issues a formal apology. Done, Linda said. I'll have our attorney draw up the papers. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. Deeds to the street in both common areas. The HOA paid me $15,000. All fines were officially voided. The fraudulent lien was removed from the county records. Linda sent a formal apology letter on HOA letterhead, acknowledging that I'd been treated unfairly, and that the HOA had overstepped its authority. Karen showed up at the next HOA meeting. Anyway, walking in like she still belonged there. I'm here for the board meeting, she announced. Linda looked up from the head of the table. Karen, you were removed from the board by majority vote. You're no longer president. That vote was invalid. I'm still president. No, you're not. The vote was legitimate and followed proper procedure. You're welcome to attend as a resident, but you're not on the board. I'll sue all of you for this, Karen shouted, Tom to man in the Riverside Oaks. Polaw stood up. Karen, just stop. You've cost us enough already. Settled the lawsuit. We paid him $15,000 we didn't have, and we almost got sued personally because of your ego. It's over. Karen left without another word. The street and common areas now officially belong to the HOA. Maintenance was their responsibility. The parking permits I'd imposed were voided. Okay, everything went back to normal, except for one thing. A week after the settlement, I was reviewing the property records for all 8 houses, making sure the deed transfers had been properly recorded. That's when I noticed something about Lot 3, Karen's house. It was listed as a rental property. I pulled up the lease agreements that had transferred to me when I bought the properties. Most of the houses had been vacant, but 2 had existing tenants whose leases I'd inherited. One of them was Karen Mitchell. She wasn't a homeowner. She'd been renting from the previous owner, the developer who'd gone bankrupt. When I bought the properties at auction, I'd become her landlord. I checked the payment history. Her rent was $2,200 per month. Her lease had expired 4 months ago and converted to month-to-month. Her last payment was 3 months ago. She was $6,600 behind on rent. I called Marcus. You're not going to believe this, I said. Karen Mitchell has been renting from you this entire time, Marcus said. She's been acting like she owns the place, running the HOA like a dictator, calling the police to evict you from your own property, and the whole time, she's been your tenant. I stared at the lease agreement on my screen. Tenant name, Karen Mitchell. Lot 3, Riverside Oaks. Monthly rent, $2,200. Last payment received 3 months ago. She owes me $6,600 in back rent, I said. Her lease expired 4 months ago, Marcus added. She's month to month now, which means you can terminate with proper notice. Do you want to pursue eviction? Thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Send her a notice. She has 5 days to pay in full or vacate. Marcus drafted the notice that afternoon. It was direct and legally precise. Dear Ms. Mitchell, you are currently in arrears on rent payments for the property at Lot 3 Riverside Oaks, in the amount of $6,600 3 months, at $2,200 a month. This constitutes a material breach of your lease agreement. You have 5 days from receipt of this notice to pay all past due rent in full or vacate the premises. Failure to comply will result in eviction proceedings. Sincerely, Marcus Webb. Attorney for property owner. He sent it via certified mail and email. Karen's response came 2 hours later. Email only, all caps. I'm not paying you a cent. This is retaliation for standing up to you and protecting our community. I will see you in court. Marcus forwarded it to me with a 1-sentence reply that makes this easier. We file for eviction. The eviction lawsuit was filed 3 days later in county court. The claims were straightforward: non-payment of rent and holdover tenancy after lease expiration. The court date was set for 3 weeks out standard. It's timeline for eviction cases. Karen received the summons by a sheriff's deputy at her front door. I watched from my window as she read it, her face going red, then pale, then red again. That night, she posted on every social media platform she could find. Urgent. Greedy landlord is trying to evict me for standing up for homeowners' rights. This is retaliation because I fought his predatory practices. He's trying to make me homeless because I dared to challenge him. Hashtag Justice Forker and hashtag Stand Up to Greed. She posted photos of herself looking sad and vulnerable. She posted screenshots of the eviction notice with my name highlighted. She created a GoFundMe, Help Karen Fight Unjust Eviction. Within 2 days, she'd raised $400 from people who didn't know the full story. I stayed quiet. Marcus advised me not to respond publicly, would only fuel the drama. But the residents of Riverside Oaks knew the truth. They started speaking. Up, Linda posted in the neighborhood Facebook group. For clarity, since there's misinformation circulating, Karen was removed as HOA president by board vote for costing the HOA $15,000. In legal fees fighting a lawsuit, we had no chance of winning. The eviction has nothing to do with her role in the HOA. She hasn't paid rent in 3 months. That's why she's being evicted. Tom posted his own comment. Karen called the police on the property owner, claiming he was trespassing when he tried to move in. Turns out he owned all 8 houses on this street, including the one Karen rents. She knew he was the landlord and still called the cops on him. She's not a victim here, Susan added. Karen paid herself $150,000 from HOA funds over 5 years without telling anyone. We only found out during the lawsuit. Maybe she should use some of that money to pay her rent. The truth started spreading. Karen's social media posts got less sympathy and more questions. The GoFundMe stalled at $430. The eviction hearing was on a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. The courthouse handled evictions in bulk, 12 cases scheduled that day. Each given about 15 minutes, I arrived with Marcus at 8:45. Karen was all ready. There, sitting alone on a bench in the hallway. No attorney. She was representing herself. When our case was called, we filed into a small courtroom. The judge was a woman in her 60s who looked tired and unimpressed. Case number 2026 CV4421, the clerk announced. Name verse, Karen Mitchell. The judge looked at Karen. Ms. Mitchell, do you have legal representation?
No, Your Honor.
I'm representing myself because this eviction is retaliation. He's punishing me for standing up to him as HOA president. The judge looked at me. Mr. Name, what are the grounds for eviction? Non-payment of rent, Your Honor? Ms. Mitchell hasn't paid rent in 3 months. She owes $6,600 in back rent. The judge turned back to Karen. Ms. Mitchell, did you pay rent for the last 3 months? I withheld rent because of uninhabitable conditions. What conditions? Karen pulled out her phone and started reading from notes. He installed security cameras on the street pointing at my house. He towed my car. He charged residents $1,200 for parking permits. It's harassment and creates a hostile living environment. The judge looked at Marcus. Counselor, Your Honor, the cameras are on the street which my client owns. The car was towed for illegal parking on private property, and the parking fees were rescinded as part of a legal settlement. None of these relate to the habitability of Miss Mitchell's residence. She never reported any habitability issues to my client in writing, as required by her lease. The judge looked at Karen. Did you report habitability issues to your landlord? In writing? No. But did you pay rent? I'm not paying until he removes the cameras and stops harassing me. The judge sighed and made a note on her paperwork. Ms. Mitchell, withholding rent is only legal if you've properly notified the landlord of habitability issues and given them time to remedy those issues. Security cameras on a public street don't constitute uninhabitable conditions. A towed car. It's retaliation. Do you have evidence that he's evicting you specifically because of your HOA activities, rather than because you haven't paid rent? He's targeting me because I stood up to him? That's not evidence, that's speculation. The judge looked at her paperwork. You're 3 months behind on rent. You didn't report any legitimate habitability issues in writing. You have no legal defense for non-payment. She signed the judgment, ruling in favor of the plaintiff. Ms. Mitchell, you're ordered to vacate the property within 10 days. You're also ordered to pay $6,600 in back rent, plus court costs of $350. If you don't vacate within 10 days, the sheriff will forcibly remove you. Karen stood up, her voice rising. This is unfair. You're letting him destroy our community. You're letting corporate greed win. Ma'am, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Karen sat down, shaking with rage. The next case was called. We filed. Out of the courtroom, Karen didn't move out. Day 1 through day 9, she stayed in the house. She posted on social media every single day about the unjust eviction. She filmed TikTok videos from inside the house, crying and talking about how the system was rigged against regular people. On day 7, she organized a protest outside my house. 4 people showed up, 3 from surrounding neighborhoods who'd signed her petition and 1 friend from her church. They stood on the sidewalk holding signs, "Stop predatory evictions" and "Justice for Karen." I stayed inside and ignored them. They left after an hour. Day 10 came and went. Karen was still in the house. I called the sheriff's office and scheduled the lockout for day 11 at 9 a.m. The sheriff arrived exactly on time with a locksmith. I stood on my front porch and watched. The sheriff knocked on Karen's door. "Ms. Mitchell, this is the sheriff's department. Open the door, please." No response. He knocked again, louder. "Ma'am, we have a court order for eviction. Okay. Open the door, or we'll force entry." The door opened. Karen stood there in sweatpants and a hoodie, her eyes red from crying. "You're making me homeless," she said. "Ma'am, you have 30 minutes to gather essential personal items. The locksmith will then change the locks. Any items left behind will be stored for 15 days, after which they'll be disposed of per state law." "Where am I supposed to go?" "It's not my concern, ma'am." "You were ordered to vacate 10 days ago." Karen grabbed suitcases and started packing. She took clothes, some boxes of personal items, her laptop. She left most of the furniture per the lease agreement. The rental came partially furnished, and that furniture stayed with the property. At 9:35 a.m., she carried the last suitcase to her car. The locksmith changed the locks. The sheriff handed me the new keys. Karen sat in her car for 5 minutes, crying. Then she drove away. Linda called me that afternoon. She's gone. She's gone. Thank God it's been so peaceful the last few weeks without her stirring up drama. We should have removed her years ago. Karen moved in with a friend 2 towns over, according to posts she made on Facebook. She continued posting bitter messages about corrupt landlords and rigged courts for weeks. Fewer and fewer people engaged. With them, the residents of Riverside Oaks were relieved. The HOA ran smoothly under Linda's leadership. No drama, no lawsuits. just normal neighborhood maintenance. 2 weeks after the eviction, I received a notice in the mail from City Code Enforcement. Someone had filed a complaint claiming my rental properties on Riverside Oaks violated safety codes. The complaint listed structural damage, electrical hazards, and unpermitted modifications. A city inspector showed up 3 days later. He walked through the property Karen had been renting, checking outlets, stairs, railings, smoke detectors. He found 2 minor issues: a loose handrail on the front steps and 2 electrical outlets with outdated covers. Nothing serious, nothing that constituted a safety violation. "I'll write these up," the inspector said. "You've got 30 days to fix them. After that, you're clear. Can I ask who filed the complaint?" He checked his paperwork. "Filed online, name listed as ... Jennifer Thompson." I'd never heard of Jennifer Thompson. I asked. Linda and Tom neither had heard the name either. "Might be fake," the inspector said.
We get that sometimes. People file complaints under fake
names. I had the repairs done within a week. Then another complaint came in. Different fake name, Robert Martinez, claiming the house at Lot 5 had plumbing issues and mold. Another inspection, nothing found. Then another complaint. Susan Chen, electrical hazards at Lot 7. Another inspection. Nothing found. Over 3 weeks, I received 8 separate code enforcement complaints, all filed under different fake names, all claiming violations at different properties on Riverside Oaks. Every inspection cost me $300 and half a day of my time. The city was getting annoyed too. They were sending inspectors out for bogus complaints. I called Marcus. "Someone's filing false complaints. I think it's Karen." "Can you prove it?" "Not yet." Marcus contacted the city attorney's office. He explained the situation and requested the IP addresses of the computers used to file the online complaints. The city attorney reviewed the request and agreed filing false complaints was illegal. And if someone was abusing the system, they wanted to know. 2 weeks later, Marcus got the report. 8 complaints. 3 different IP addresses. 1 matched. Karen's cell phone. 1 matched a public library computer security footage showed Karen using that computer at the exact timestamp the complaint was filed. 1 matched a coffee shop downtown. Karen's credit card receipt showed she'd been there at the exact time that complaint was submitted. She filed all 8 complaints, Marcus said, using fake names, trying to get your properties condemned or at least cost you time and money. What do? We file for a restraining order, and we sue her for harassment. But the complaints didn't stop after the first 8. Over the next 3 weeks, I received 12 more code enforcement complaints, all filed anonymously or under obviously fake names. Michael Johnson claimed Lot 2 had structural damage to the foundation. Patricia Lee reported electrical hazards at Lot 4. David Williams said Lot 7 had unpermitted work and plumbing violations. The city sent inspectors every single time. Each inspection cost me $300 and ate up half a day while I met the inspector, walked them through the property, and waited while they checked everything. They never found anything serious. A loose outlet cover here, a minor crack in a sidewalk there. Nothing that constituted a real violation. By the 12th complaint, even the city inspectors were getting annoyed. "Whoever's filing these is wasting everyone's time," one inspector told me. "These are bogus complaints. Should file a police report. Someone's filing false complaints to harass you. That's illegal. We need to find out who." "I think we both know who," I said. Marcus contacted the city attorney's office and requested the IP addresses of all computers used to file the online complaints. He explained the situation: serial false complaints, clear pattern of harassment, abuse of city resources. The city attorney agreed to provide the information. Filing false complaints was a misdemeanor, and if someone was systematically abusing the system, they wanted to prosecute. 2 weeks later, we got the report. 12 complaints filed over 3 weeks. 3 different IP addresses. The first IP address matched Karen. Mitchell's cell phone traced through her mobile carrier. The second matched a computer at the public library on Maple Street. Marcus requested security footage from the library for the date and time that complaint was filed. The footage showed Karen sitting at that computer at exactly 2:47 p.m. The timestamp on the complaint submission, the third IP address belonged to a coffee shop downtown called Brew and Bean. Marcus checked Karen's credit card records. She'd used her card at that coffee shop at 10:23 a.m. on the day that complaint was filed. The complaint timestamp, 10:31 a.m. She filed all 12 complaints, Marcus said. Using fake names, different locations, trying to cover her tracks. She's harassing you. What do? We file for a restraining order? And then we sue her for every dime this has cost you. The restraining order hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. Karen showed up representing herself again, no attorney. Marcus presented the evidence, the fake complaints, the IP address matches, the security footage, the credit card receipts. He also presented evidence that Karen had been repeatedly driving past my properties on Riverside Oaks despite no longer living there. The judge reviewed everything carefully. Then he looked at Karen. Double quotes, Miss Mitchell, did you file these complaints? Was concerned about safety, Karen said. Those properties are rentals now. I wanted to make sure they were up to code. Under fake names. I didn't want him to retaliate against me. You filed 12 complaints in 3 weeks. City inspectors found no violations. You used city resources to harass the plaintiff. I was protecting my former community. The judge was not impressed. You were evicted from that community for non-payment of rent. You no longer have any connection to those properties. Filing false complaints is abuse of government resources and constitutes harassment. He signed the restraining order. Ms. Mitchell, you are ordered to stay at least 500 feet from all properties on Riverside Oaks. You may not contact the plaintiff directly or indirectly. You may not file any further complaints regarding those properties unless you have first-hand knowledge of an actual code violation. Violation of this order will result in arrest. He also ordered Karen to pay $2,400 in reimbursement for the false inspection costs. $200 per complaint times 12. This is unfair, Karen said, standing. He evicted me illegally, and now you're punishing me for trying to hold him accountable. Ma'am, sit down. This hearing is over. 3 days after the restraining order was issued, I got a call at 6 a.m. from Tom, one of the Riverside Oaks residents. You need to come down here, he said. Someone vandalized your properties. I drove to Riverside Oaks at 6:30 a.m. 3 of the garage doors had been spray painted with the words, "Greedy Landlord" in red paint. 2 mailboxes had been knocked over and smashed. A window at Lot 5 was cracked. I called the police. They took a report and checked my security cameras. The footage showed a person in a dark hoodie and jeans, face covered with a mask, walking down the street at 2:15 a.m. The person spray-painted the garages, kicked over the mailboxes, threw a rock at the window before leaving. The video wasn't clear enough to identify the person's face, but the build, the height, the movements, everything matched Karen. We can't arrest her based on this, the officer said, but you can use it in a civil case. Marcus filed a lawsuit the next day. The complaint was comprehensive. $6,600 in unpaid back rent from the eviction, $2,400 in false inspection costs that the judge had already ordered but Karen hadn't paid, $3,500 in vandalism damages, $8,000 in legal fees, plus damages for harassment and defamation based on her social media posts claiming I'd engaged in predatory practices, total $20,500. This time, Karen hired an attorney, one of those personal injury lawyers who advertises on bus benches and late-night TV. His name was Rick Donovan, and his slogan was, "We fight for you." Rick called Marcus 2 days after being hired. Marcus put him on speaker. I've reviewed the case, Rick said. Your client has strong evidence. My advice to Ms. Mitchell is to settle. What did she say? Marcus asked. She said she's not giving him assent. She thinks she can win on principle. There's no principle here. She didn't pay rent, filed false complaints, and likely vandalized his property. I know. I told her that. She won't listen, so I'm withdrawing. I'm not taking her money to fight a case she's going to lose. Karen fired Rick and decided to represent herself. Again, the trial was held on a Wednesday in civil court. The judge a different one this time. A man in his 50s named Judge Morrison heard the case in a single day. Marcus presented the evidence methodically. The lease agreement showing Karen had stopped paying rent. The eviction judgment. But IP address records proving she'd filed 12 false code complaints. Photos of the vandalism. Video footage showing a person matching her description. Screenshots of her defamatory social media posts claiming I was a predatory investor. Karen's defense was emotional and repetitive. He's a corporate investor, destroying communities. I was protecting homeowners. I built that community. He tore it apart with his greed. Marcus cross-examined her. Ms. Mitchell, did you pay rent for 3 months before you were evicted? I withheld it in protest of his harassment. That's a yes or no question. Did you pay rent? No, but did you file 12 code enforcement complaints in 3 weeks? I was concerned about safety. Using fake names? Karen hesitated. I wanted to remain anonymous, because you knew the complaints were false. They weren't false. Did inspectors find any violations? Minor ones. Did they find any violations that justified 12 separate complaints? Silence. Marcus displayed the vandalism video on the courtroom screen. This person is approximately 5'6", 140 pounds, wearing a hoodie and jeans. Does that match your build, Ms. Mitchell? That could be anyone. The vandalism occurred at 2:15 a.m., 3 days after you were issued a restraining order. Where were you at 2:15 a.m. that night? I was home. Can anyone verify that? I live alone. Marcus pulled up a traffic camera image showing Karen's car parked 2 blocks from Riverside Oaks at 2:03 a.m. This is your vehicle, registered to you, parked near the scene at the time of the vandalism. Karen's face went red. That doesn't prove anything. Judge Morrison had heard enough. He ruled from the bench. I find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Ms. Mitchell, your behavior has been vindictive, illegal, and destructive. You didn't pay rent. You filed false complaints to harass the plaintiff. And the evidence strongly suggests you vandalized his property in violation of a restraining order. He ordered Karen to pay $20,500 in total damages, including back rent, inspection costs, vandalism repairs, legal fees, and additional damages for harassment and defamation. If I see you in this courtroom again for anything similar, I will consider referring this matter for criminal prosecution. Do you understand? This is unfair. Do you understand, Ms. Mitchell? Yes. Karen didn't pay. She ignored the judgment for 2 months. Marcus filed for wage garnishment. Karen worked as an office manager at a dental practice, making about $3,200 per month. The court ordered 25% of her after-tax wages garnished until the judgment was paid. In full, Karen posted about it on Facebook. System is rigged against regular people. Courts protect corporate greed. Former Riverside Oaks residents commented on her posts. Tom wrote, "You brought this on yourself, Karen. You didn't pay rent for 3 months, harassed your landlord, and vandalized his property. Actions have consequences," Linda wrote. "You cost the HOA $15,000 fighting a lawsuit you knew we'd lose. You paid yourself $150,000 without telling anyone. Don't talk to us about fairness." With Karen gone, Riverside Oaks thrived. Linda ran the HOA transparently. She posted monthly financial reports online. She got competitive bids for all maintenance work. She didn't fine people for minor violations. The HOA became what it was supposed to be, a functional organization that maintained common areas and stayed out of residents' lives. I renovated the remaining vacant properties. I sold 4 of them to families who wanted to live there. I kept for as long-term rentals, including the one Karen had lived in. Property values on Riverside Oaks increased 12% over the next year, higher than surrounding neighborhoods. 1 year after the eviction, Karen was still paying off the judgment. Through wage garnishment, she had 3 more years to go. She posted occasionally on social media, still claiming she'd been protecting the community and that I was a predatory investor. Fewer and fewer people engaged with her posts. I rarely thought about her. Then one afternoon, I got an email notification from the State Real Estate Licensing Board. Someone had filed a formal complaint against me, claiming I'd engaged in predatory property practices and harassment of tenants. The complaint was filed by Karen Mitchell. I forwarded it to Marcus. He called the licensing board, explained the full history, and sent them copies of all court judgments. The board dismissed the complaint within a week. No merit, the letter said. Marcus called me. She's never going to stop. Let her try, I said. She's irrelevant now. And she was.